Ever wondered what a product marketing manager actually does on a day-to-day basis? Well, in this video, I will show you exactly what a product marketer does and also what we do to instill on a daily basis that saves us from things going wrong. This is stuff that I have not been able to find anywhere on Google. This information is like gold dust that people would pay me thousands of pounds for. So this one's going to be a good one. No 2 days look the same. Obviously, it's a cliche for a reason. However, there are patterns to recognize. For example, you might work at an organization or want to join an organization that has daily stand ups. Daily stand ups are usually 15 minutes in the morning or at any time in the day, depending on which time zone your colleagues are in. Typically, with our closest team, so either our product marketing team or if you're a founding or solo PMM, then it will be you under the team that you're under. So it's either marketing or product, depending on who you roll up to. And our stand-up meeting will be things like, what are we working on today? Do we have any blockers? So do I have any blockers on the things that I'm working on today? And also, what is it that I'm working on later this week? What is it that is a priority? So depending on the organization, I will typically work towards a week or 2 week sprints. So 2 week or weekly sprints are basically everything that I need to get done that week. And I have put it into the platform or software that we work towards. So whether it's monday.com or Airtable, whatever, then I'll put all of my tasks that are associated and I will work towards those activities as part of that sprint. So I will usually have a stand up as part of my team. But also when I've worked remotely, for example, my last job that I worked at was an American firm. I worked remotely from here in London, UK. I had my stand up in Slack. So I actually set it up as like a Slack bot where it would ping a message within our product marketing channel and it would ask the stand up questions. And then what we would do as PMMs is under the thread, we would actually write our answers as to what we're working on today. Do we have any blockers? And what we have shipped this week and what our goals are for the rest of the week. So it would just make sure that not only was I holding myself accountable, but if I actually did have a blocker, for example, I'm waiting on sign off for a specific sales deck from a manager, then I would ping that manager in my stand up to alert them that I'm actually being blocked from shipping this to the wider sales team because I need their sign off. I need their green light. So usually that happens in the morning. And as part of the morning, I would usually check my emails. So especially when I worked in a completely different time zone to my American colleagues, I would check my emails just to see if anything urgent came up or if a customer interview fell through or if they sent me a new time or if they've like postponed, rescheduled, whatever. I just want to be caught up. Now, for me, here's the difference. Sometimes in the mornings, I will check my emails, but knowing how I work, which is I am most productive anytime, mainly before lunch and definitely before 3 p.m. After 3 p.m., I'm like a zombie. I'm like, meh, like I'm just trying to when I was drinking coffee, I just fill myself with coffee and just try and get through the day. But after 3 p.m., like right off. So I would know that I need to get with my working style, I need to get my deepest work done in the mornings. Otherwise, I'm just like a zombie by the afternoon. So I would actually sometimes check my emails, but I won't act on them until the afternoon. So I would prioritize my workload around how I work. So then I would always do my best work. And I think that's super important because in videos or blog articles like this, where it's like a day in the life of a PMM, and it's like, oh my God, I have my latte and I have my meditation and I do my avocado on toast. And it's like, sometimes you might see that as like a prescription and be like, oh, well, Hattie has a latte and therefore I must have a latte, and Hattie does, the stand-ups and therefore I must do stand-ups or I must check my emails. And actually, no, it's not prescriptive. It's about how do you utilize your day to be the best worker and maximize your effort for the day. So it's all about not only the executional output, but also how you're carving the day to make sure it's effective for you. Because our role is chaotic because we work across so many different teams with so many different stakeholders meaning people either internally where we work, aka our colleagues, or stakeholders which are external from where we work, aka customers, prospective customers, people that we need to join on like a webinar and host a webinar, etc., and we're getting in front of them, right? So it's not as prescriptive as like, here's ABC and you must follow this to have the perfect PMM day. It's like, no, you have to adhere it to you. So for me, I know my working style is I like to wake up early, get my best work done before lunch, and then I start to feel myself kind of like, that's when I just want to do meetings, because I'm like, I'm not in deep work mode anymore. I'm just like, crack on with meetings, and then the next day and the next morning I will get on with my deep work. So find out when is the most effective time for you, but I will continue on with what I found to be my kind of typical daily activities as a PMM. The day in the life of a PMM really revolves around the reactive work and the proactive work. So the proactive work for me was always scheduled in the mornings because I was the most effective, most switched on, just want to like bam, 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 get stuff done. It might be in the afternoons for you. It might be even in the evenings for you, depending on when you get your best work done. And if you work remotely, this is super efficient because then you can tie the day around you. And that way you can get the most done. Now, the reactive work is the sinister bit. And I feel like this is what a lot of PMMs, especially my clients, have fell into a trap of, where it's the reactive work that just sends them chaotic. They're like frantic because there's a salesperson asking for this and the customer support asking for that. And like the product manager now needs like 2 launches next month and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa, like what is happening? It's so reactive, when actually it's a case of being like, okay, well, how do I manage my day to take this into account? It's not about being like, I'm going to bury my head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. And I'll be like, oh my God, I don't know. And then get overwhelmed, burnt out, quit, whatever the case may be. It's actually about, for me, I would actually schedule in 1 hour a day for reactive work, and that was burning fire work. What do I mean by this? Burning fires is like someone pings me and they're like, urgent. I need this from you right now, Hattie. Like, I need a competitive teardown between us and a competitor that I'm now weighing up with a major enterprise organization that's on this call right now, or I'm going to have a conversation with them in a couple hours. And instead of me being like, dude, why couldn't you give me the heads up? I would be like, okay, cool. I've actually factored in time for this. And that way I can take my allocated 1 hour, which I haven't written it down in my calendar, bear in mind, but it's just like a mental gauge that I always keep at least 1 hour free. Otherwise, the trap is if you don't mentally gauge it and keep it in mind, you'll be doing extra hours outside of work hours. And that's where the trap is, where I know a lot of PMMs who are like, Hattie, I'm literally working 16-hour days, 14-hour days, like crazy amounts of hours in the day. And I'm like, it's because you haven't factored in the reactive work as part of your proactive work in the 8 hours that you're allocated to do your job. Taking away lunch, which is maybe an hour, so it's 7 hours, right? How do you make those 7 hours the most conducive to effective work as possible? Making sure that it's aligned to how you work, and making sure that it's also taken into account reactive work that is naturally part of the game. It's part of the job. And I feel like I need to reiterate this. I feel like I need to keep repeating this because some people are like, Hattie, why is it so chaotic? And like, it's just crazy. And I'm like, it's part of the job. It's because most other teams, they're pretty siloed, right? Like sales just has to interact mainly with prospects and clients, customer support mainly with our current customers. We have to work across so many different fucking teams and so many different people that it makes sense that there would be chaos. So it's not about being like, well, I'm shocked, but it's actually being like, well, I know this is part of the job, and therefore, how do I proactively set myself up for success in this? And you might need 2 hours a day of reactive work, and you might have to allocate this in your mind to be like, well, at any moment, I can stop a project, I can hit pause. For example, if you're doing deep work and you're in the midst of doing a go-to-market plan, and then someone walks in to your office and you're doing the job and you're like working on, your manager is like, I need this for an executive meeting that's literally happening in an hour's time. Can you help me do this? You are then able to say yes. That is the beautiful thing. It's the ability to say yes and then to say no to other people where it can wait. So it's about creating boundaries. And I believe me, my friend, as a PMM to a PMM, boundaries is where we win. Being assertive is where we win. The minute that we have instilled boundaries and assertiveness, we're able to then be able to do excellent work whilst also managing expectations of people. So an example of this is what I did in my last job. And if we jump into productmarketers.com, in the resources section, under the do the work by instilling boundaries, here is what I actually did. So this is a screenshot from my calendar at my previous company. I used to have no meeting Wednesdays. That was like my thing. And it was so effective for me because what I used to do, having worked for an American firm, was I used to work my deep work in the mornings up until midday. Then most of my American colleagues would log on by 1 p.m. And on a Wednesday, I felt like a lot of work that had trickled from the meetings from a Tuesday afternoon, which were jam-packed worth of meetings until maybe like 8 p.m., which is fine because it's an American firm, right? Everyone's still on quite late, and I was okay with it. I needed my Wednesdays to catch up on the work that was starting to fall through the net. And that's when I told everyone and put it in my calendar as a repeating thing, no meeting Wednesdays. That was my thing. No meeting Wednesdays. And obviously, when something urgent came up and they were like, "We need you on this meeting," and it's on a Wednesday, I would be like, "That's fine. I will attend. That's completely fine." However, on the whole, I made sure that it wasn't the case. Now, you might not need this. Maybe this is too kind of intense. Maybe it's not conducive to the current meetings that are currently in your calendar. However, I would technically try, and once you start to build up kudos and authority in an organization and they trust you, I would really try to pare down the number of meetings that you're actually in and make sure that the meetings are conducive to work. And they don't have to be 30 minutes long. They could be 15-minute meetings. I shit you not. I've had meetings that were like 60 minutes in the calendar, and I would say, "Hey, can we do this in 15 minutes or 20 minutes? Is that possible?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." I'd be like, "Well, let's do that then." So a breakdown of when I was doing this on Wednesdays, and I will read through this. So a PMM on LinkedIn DM'd me and asked, how can product marketing professionals build resilience in high pressure situations? What I said was, the only constant in life is change. Boundaries are the solution. Hence, my solution was no meeting Wednesdays. This worked perfectly, as working remotely from the UK to an American firm meant I could get my deep work done in the morning with no distractions and have meetings from the afternoon onwards during the week and dedicate my entire Wednesdays to reducing meeting fatigue and get more work executed. Depending on your company, you might have busier seasons like Q4, for example, where it's not only Q1 planning season, but it's wrapping up projects for the entire year, building new features ready for the new year, and on top of that, dealing with ad hoc fires and requests. Phew! I have firm boundaries in my calendar on certain days, and others have flexibility within my weekly calendar. For example, Wednesdays are no meeting days. This means when an unexpected change or high priority request comes in, I can fully focus on a Wednesday and get it shipped without distractions. It is my deep work day, and it works well because I can use it to action any items that come in on the Tuesday and the Thursday the week before too. So the week before, I can implement all of that. Not only that, I also, and this is important, I also keep about 30 to 60 minutes free every day for the ad hoc Slack messages, fires, and last minute requests. The more I've been able to mindfully and proactively carve out time for work And not only just the meetings, the more I'm able to get done ahead of the next team or cross-function sync. The more I'm able to get done, the less pressure I feel. The less pressure I feel, the happier I am. Yay. This is quite a complex sentence, but basically what I mean by this is the more I'm able to get done and the more I'm ahead of it proactively, the more I'm able to go to the next meeting with that same person or the same team and say it's done. And I feel like a lot of people procrastinate on things that can be done really quickly if you just fucking force yourself to do it, or if you actively carve out time to do it. It's not the responsibility of anyone else, including your manager, to find you time for you to do the work. Even if it's an absolute shit show, even if it's chaotic, even if everyone is throwing stuff at you, it's a case of saying, hey, I'm going to add that to the backlog, meaning I'm going to add it to my list of to-dos, and I'm going to actively find the time to do it. So that's what that means. If anyone here is looking for a way to build resilience in high pressure situations, you have my utmost support to prioritize your time. We cannot control our externalities, but we can build individual systems to deal with them, which is basically what I said. It's not the responsibility of anyone external from us. We need to carve out the time and make sure that we are proactive in the things that we're doing and making sure that we're working on the highest priority and the highest leverage activities first. And if it's an easy, low-hanging fruit activity, make sure that's out of the way and done. Move on to the next thing. So yeah, and then if anyone has any strategies that they want to share, ping them in the general discussion channel. So if you work at a startup or a chaotic environment, it's really important to set these boundaries so you make sure that the work gets done, because the worst thing is if you fall behind and then you become the blocker to so many different things, especially if there are multiple launches happening at the same time, or if there are acquisitions happening right now. You need to make sure that you're moving at the speed of light whilst also executing and doing really high quality work. And that's the important thing. So the day-to-day, I personally don't want to wake up and dread my day and be like, Lord, have mercy on my soul. Like, what is going on today? And like, what fires am I going to be hit with? Whilst if I go in with a stoic attitude, and I've read books on stoicism, I have one right here, because I am basically a stoic in everything that I do, is I'm just like, fires are expected, chaos is expected, especially in the product marketing role, out of all other roles, apart from maybe the CMO or the CEO, which again, they work across so many different teams. So it's obviously expected. So how do I mitigate the amount of stress and chaos and make sure that I'm not adding to it? So I actually want to make sure that I'm the pinnacle of peace and I'm the pinnacle of like calm across my other teams. And this is something that, again, I've been praised on so many times by product managers that I've worked with, where they're always like, even if it's a real shit show and it's really chaotic, Hattie still has a really calm demeanor. And I usually do, because I'm just like, yeah, it's because I just expect it to be chaotic. So if I expect it to be this way, it's like my expectations are managed. I'm just like, yeah, it makes sense. Like everything's going to be a bit of a mess, but everything works out in the end anyway. So I'm not going to stress about this. And even if you're coming at me with really stressy energy, I'm going to match it with like really calm energy, because I'm like, it's okay. You're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. It's not that deep, and we're not saving lives. We're creating software. I take each day as it comes, but also I have these boundaries for me to protect me and also to protect my energy so I can bring it to doing the best work, and I can show up to meetings really engaged and have my brain free of like the mess. So I can use like post-its around my desk. I can have notes. I can put it into like, a software that we all aggregate all of our tasks, so then I can see across different teams, make sure that stand-ups are up to date. And then I just do, and I make sure that people know about it. As part of the reactive work, I want to ensure everyone that I am the voice of the customer for them and that they can hit me up at any time. And I will give you an answer on our customers, makes me really super valuable as a resource to them, but also it helps me stay up on my game, which is also a great accountability feature. Because here's the thing, if anyone hits me up at any time of the day, from the CEO all the way down to the worker bees like me, and they're like, Hattie, I need to understand, who are our major competitors? Tell me something about the psychographics of our customer. Then I will always have these answers for them, or I can tell them where to find it within our knowledge base or within our internal documentation where I've noted it down. I will just ping them to the right place, and I'll make sure that I do it in a timely manner, especially if they hit me up with like urgent, I need this right now. Then I do that and I make sure that I have that time there. So I carve out the deep work time, but also I make sure that if there is reactive work that needs to be answered, especially with me being the voice of the customer, I am there for them and I show them that I have their back. But also on top of this, in an ideal world, I would have loved to have at least 1 hour a day to one interview or conversation with a customer. And I feel like in an ideal PMM day in the life, that is what it would include. So if you're able to, 100% do it. 30 minutes to an hour a day, if it's possible. Get on a call with your customer, get on a call with your prospective customer, get on a call with someone who's the ideal customer, because then the more that you're engaging and learning from them and learning about what they're seeing in the market, what issues they're facing, it will better internalize and help you harness what kind of content or what kind of direction to steer and veer your different teams in. So whether it's the product team and you want them to work on a specific feature, or something's coming up in the market that you want to tell them about competitor wise, let them know. If there's something that you have learned about is a huge pain point and that has been solved with your product, again, let the marketing team know, because then it could be a potential case study. But in an ideal world, I would have loved to have daily interviews and conversations with customers. Then, in terms of the proactive piece, there's what's called competitive intelligence. I like to break competitive intelligence down in simple words, which is basically kind of just being nosy and keeping an eye out on what the competition is doing. So for me, I had signed up to the email newsletter of all of my competitors. I had made sure that I was keeping an eye out on their knowledge base and what they were dropping in terms of like, what are new features or what are new ways that you can use their tool, and seeing what they were actually pushing out to their customers. I would also see like what were their press releases that were coming out and what was it mentioning. So then we can stay on top of what our competition was doing. So basically I would carve out time to be nosy and see what the competition was doing. And that was always part of like my daily routine. Because it takes a minimal amount of time, and especially if you have the email newsletters, it comes to you, which makes it super easy, because it'll be probing me where it's like, oh, like the competitors in my inbox, ooh, what are they doing? And then I would lead me back to their website, check out their knowledge base, like, ooh, interesting, let me tell this information on our Slack and tell other teams what the heck they're doing. And it's a really good idea to have like a Slack channel dedicated to competitors, and that way it's not only just you as the PMM actually speaking about what the competitors are up to, but if other team members are seeing anything or hearing anything out from prospective customers or the people that they're interviewing and chatting to, then they can share it as well. So then other team members can share what they're seeing as well, and it becomes a bit of a flywheel. Then the next section that I'm going to break down is the listening and reading piece and the actual writing piece. So when it comes to the listening and reading piece, this is usually for me, the meetings I'm attending. If there were recorded calls without me on a different time zone, then I would recap and watch those. So I would make sure that I would have time allocating to watching those meetings. If, for example, the sales team were on prospective calls with prospects, I would carve out time to watch those as well in my week, not daily. So it would just be some time in my week. I would have like an hour just to watch what the sales team are actually saying on prospective calls. And I would make sure that I'm also reading any new documentation that is coming out from our internal team. So then I always have a glance because, hey, there might be people internally who have not run it past me to get my take on it. And therefore I can be like, hey, Tom, I like awesome job on this new blog. I would really recommend that we add in this new feature. I don't know if you're aware of it. I'd love to show you sometime. And because it's like so important, this. And then Tom will be like, oh yeah, that's super awesome. Yeah, let's catch like 15 minutes in the calendar. And then that way I'm catching up on what is happening across my team, across the org, and making sure that I'm up to date. Because if something isn't messaged or positioned right, it can have real detrimental effects. And it sometimes comes down to the PMM. And it's not necessarily Tom's fault, but it might have been my fault in like, how do I make sure that he's always educated on what we're actually positioning as? And therefore, he's not taking it in a completely different direction, right? So I would check the Slack messages, I would check any new documentation, I would see what the engineering team is up to. I would just try and keep a gauge of where we're at, what's going on. If there was any company update meetings, I'll make sure that I'll attend that, or maybe I'll even present on that. So basically, it's a case of reading up on what is happening within the organization, reading up on what is going on, like with my team, etc. Any blockers, maybe I'm a blocker for someone else, and therefore I need to account into that today to make sure that I unblock them through my activities. And then I just keep the ball rolling and make sure that I review any calls or I show up to any calls and just show up with the right information that they're expecting from that call. Then there's the writing piece, where depending on how you work with your different teams, I like to do the V1, so the version one of everything that comes out collateral wise. And there's a few reasons why I do that. Not only because I can hone in on what is super important to include in that piece of collateral, but secondly, I want to make the lives of the external teams easier, especially since I was working with a dedicated content marketing team at my last organization. So that included a copywriter, a designer, etc. And I was like, well, I don't want you to guess what's included in the email newsletter this month. Let me include what are the key features that are new this month that we need to highlight. And also what's coming up in terms of events, maybe even get the event coordinator involved in the email newsletter. So then she can actually write out what events are coming up, webinars, etc. And that way we are working collectively as a team, but I'm doing the V1, the version one. And that will include sales enablement. So I will do like a V1 for a white paper, sales deck, etc., etc. And I'll make sure that I loop in as many people as possible. So then I can create a bit of a feedback loop within the stakeholders. But ultimately, I always have the final decision unless the driver is my manager. And then my manager or the manager or a different team, for example, the sales manager, so the head of sales, could actually be the person who then gives the green light. So depending on how it actually works and who I want to have the final sign off, even though I'm looping in as many voices as possible, usually it's to loop them in so then they can contribute to the actual piece of collateral and drive it and make sure that it's on the right track. So for example, a sales enablement deck, I'm not going to create the whole thing and then show the sales team and then kick off a feedback loop. No, I'm going to speak to sales team about what they want from this deck. I'm going to get them in the deck whilst I'm building out the V1. I'm going to tag them on specific slides and be like, does this make sense? Should we add in more information here? What would you like to see here? What has been working for you so far? What information has been really, really effective that we should include in the deck? And then that way I've looped them in early. So then we are all building it together collectively because it saves time, builds really strong relationships internally, but also it allows me to have a really effective day to be like, wow, we moved really far on this and we're basically going to be finished by the end of the week, especially since I mentally always work towards either weekly sprints or bi-weekly sprints. Even if other people aren't, I work on that because I'm like, it moves me the fastest, and giving myself a deadline actually removes the procrastination from it, which is so easy to fall into. And I feel like procrastination is kind of like the devil when it comes to our job, because it will allow if you're procrastinating on one thing, it becomes two, then two becomes four, four becomes eight, and it just keeps compounding. When actually the name of the game is just executing as much as possible, but also being strategic. It's not about being like, yes, 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 I'm a person who will just do whatever you say, but actually it's about, well, what is the highest priority thing? And I'm only going to work on the highest priority thing this week that will move the needle the most for the most amount of people in either getting new customers or saving our current customers. I will also review and maintain things that are currently in flight. So I think this is also something that's kind of overlooked, which is like, oh, well, that go to market was done, or that launch was made, or that blog is out, or that email newsletter is done. Move on to the next thing, which is true. That actually happens. But I carve out time, especially on a Friday afternoon when my brain is fucking fried. Like, send me to the weekend. Like, I'm thinking, what am I going to do this weekend? Is when I review the data. So on a Friday afternoon, I will be reviewing the data. Like, what was our open rate on our email newsletter? What was our click through rate? Like, how is that? Like, who is actually checking it out? What logos are reading our email newsletter? And then what is the information that I can send to a customer support team to be like, hey, I know that we're potentially going to have that customer churn, but they're reading our email newsletter. It might be something to talk to them about. Or it might be, okay, well, we've just launched this new landing page. What is the click-through rate? What is the traffic like? Like, how many demos have we got off of the back of this new landing page this week that I can actually show tangible results that we built out this landing page with new messaging, new positioning, is maybe even for a specific vertical. What is the amount of demos that has come out of it? Or it could be, I don't know, it's just like anything that I've done that week or in the last 2 weeks, I like to review and maintain. So then it's a case of being like, well, what can be improved on this? Who can I speak to that can help improve this? So, for example, if someone did sign up for a demo for a new landing page, I would want to jump on the call with the salesperson and be like, hey, what resonated with you? What made you sign up? What made you click the CTA and join on this call right now? What was it that spoke to you? And therefore, I will hone that, make it bigger, make it bolder, make it like stand out, use it on different pages, use it in ads, etc., etc. So then it's like a review and maintaining of the results that you've had that have been successful, but also the things that aren't working well right now. It's a case of being like, well, why did that flop? Why didn't that work? Let's do a retrospective. And then a retrospective is actually carving out time with the team that you actually did the work with and saying, hey, let's do a retrospective on why that didn't work and what we can do better the next time round. And that has been super effective for me personally when I did go to market launches, because it was a great way to get the team together and tell me, what did you like about the process? What didn't you like? What actually went wrong? What went right? Were there bugs in the tool? Do we need to do more checks beforehand in terms of the quality of the product? Like, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a case of getting people together to review and maintain the stuff that you've also put out in the past, and not being like, just because it's shipped, it's done. I feel like that's important. Now, here's the tricky thing, because in some and probably most organizations, they typically only care about the new things you're creating as opposed to maintaining and optimizing the things that are currently working. So again, it's probably worth speaking to your manager or seeing what's a priority and seeing and asking them and workshopping with them, hey, is it worth me spending an hour on a Friday reviewing and maintaining the things currently done and shipped and not currently in flight, but they're actually shipped and launched? Or is it worth me using that hour to prepare for the next week, or do both? What do you think? And that way you're on the same page and they can relay that to their higher ups as well, to say, not only are we in product marketing shipping and doing amazing work and being strategic and prioritizing for our exact right ICP, but not only that, but we're optimizing and maintaining our current information. So for example, that might be updating the knowledge base to make sure it's up to date with new features. It might be updating YouTube videos on like the demos, or like installing a new demo sequence on the website, etc. So speak to your manager, because some organizations are like, no, like, you shipped that, continue, move on, like press on, do a new thing. And it's just like, well, depends on the culture of the organization, right? It's also just worth bearing in mind for you, because you might work in an organization that doesn't actually prioritize it, but another one that you might apply for in the future does. So it's just something to bear in mind and maybe get yourself into a mental habit of, even if you're not actively doing it. So the goal for me has always been to make the time to do the work, whether it's the strategic work or the tactical work, and also minimize the amount of meetings that I'm actually in. And if a meeting is not actually useful for me, what I've done a couple times is actually I've said to the people on the call, hey, if I'm not needed in this meeting, is it okay if I drop off? And if you do require me, just ping me a message on Slack. And sometimes in organizations, they will perceive this in a really great way. It's like, Hattie's saving the company money because we're not utilizing her time on this call that actually isn't really conducive to having her on it. Or sometimes I will just shut off my camera or keep my camera going, but I'll be doing work on the side. It depends on if you can multitask. It's a trick that now I'm able to do, where I'm able to listen to a call and actually actively listen through my improv comedy skill set, where I can actively listen whilst also work at the same time. Not that I would recommend that whatsoever. I would actually prefer it if you just weren't on the call, if it wasn't necessary. But hey, sometimes we're dragged into calls that just are, we're just there. But if it's like executives or C-suite, I'm always on the call. I'm always active. I'm always looking at it. I'm always like, I do not work on anything else. Like, I need them to know that I'm there for them and present. So, and especially this is important if you're in real life. If you're in real life and you're working whilst C-suite are talking, they will be like, what is she doing? Like, she needs to be switched on and listening to us, right? So it's just worthwhile thinking about, how do you maintain not only the proactive work versus the reactive work, but also how do you maintain minimizing the amount of like unnecessary work, the meetings that are just not adding to you, or they're not, if you're not learning from the meeting, or if you're not actively adding to the meeting, I would consider it redundant. And if it's redundant, try and minimize as many of them as possible. And if you can't personally verbalize it, I would recommend speaking to your manager, and then you and your manager can work together, look at your calendar in the screen share and say, hey, am I required on this? Am I required on that? And then your manager can do the great job of relaying that information to the other managers in those teams. So that way it's not coming from you, but your manager has made the executive decision on your behalf to pull you out of meetings where it just doesn't feel like it's necessary right now. And that's the beautiful way you can diplomatically state it, where it's like, it's not necessary right now, but in the future, feel free to speak to the manager to bring you as a PMM back into those calls if it's deemed necessary. So that's the best way, where it's kind of like I've been able to both have the freedom in my head to be creative, the freedom freedom in my head to also have the technical wherewithal, so I could actually be really switched on if I'm speaking to product managers or the engineers, and then bring my best self every day. And I wake up actually kind of looking forward to it. So then my day to day actually looks really nice and I'm looking forward to it as a PMM, and I'm actually enjoying it. And this is how I was able to work my full-time job. And on the side, daily, I was posting on LinkedIn. And then on the side of my full-time job, I was creating my YouTube channel. And also on top of my full-time job, I was able to do my improv comedy classes and also perform improv comedy. And on top of that, I was singing in a band and I was learning my bass guitar. And I had a social life. And it was all because I carved out the time to be proactive and reactive, and to work on the tactical and the strategic, and to minimize the meetings and make sure I was getting shit done. And I was being perceived as someone who was getting shit done. Those two are very different and very important. It's one thing to actually do the work, but you need to make other people aware that you're doing the work. And for me, when I cracked the code, and I teach all of my clients this, when I cracked the code, it was like game over. I had the mental capacity to not only enjoy the chaos, be in it, and be super calm. And then after work, I would still have energy, loads of energy, and be able to bring that to my side hustle, or like to bring that to like my hobbies, or bring that to my friends. And I would not ever have the excuse of like, I'm so tired, I just can't, or like I'm burnt out. I had cracked the code on how to just remove that. When the first few years I was just burnt out to the max, and I brought my worst self to my friends, and I brought my worst self to my hobbies, and I just couldn't show up to like classes and all of this and all of that, and I was barely singing, and I just felt so run down. I felt like my job was just encompassing my life, like I was being engulfed in it, right? My like I used to wake up dreading my day at work, dreading it. So there was a huge difference the moment I learned the unlock and started to enjoy my work. So that's why, and bear in mind, I've been the CMO and a product marketing manager. When I was a CMO, I hired marketers underneath me. I built out the team. I made sure it's super profitable, super revenue generating section of the entire organization, being able to do that in my product marketing as well, right? So I know what it takes to build out a team and to have the boundaries and the calendar from a day-to-day perspective work for you and not against you. It takes a bit of strategy, it takes a bit of thought, it takes a bit of proactive approach to think about it, and also introspection to learn about you and how you work. Are you a night owl? Are you an early bird? Are you even just like super proactive during the middle of the day? And then trying to create a working environment that fits around that, as opposed to trying to jam yourself into a jigsaw puzzle that just isn't, you're not the same piece. And it's like, if you're trying to jam yourself into something that just doesn't work, it won't work. Shock horror, it just won't. So it's about creating an environment that not only works for them as the company, but it works for you. Because if it works for you, the byproduct is it works for them. So start with you, okay? All right. So that's my day in the life of a PMM. Typically, it really involves around having time for me, going to a gym, doing my hobbies after work, having fun, having the freedom to bring my best self to work, but also in the same vein, not seeing work as too serious, like having these micro moments with friends, especially my colleagues who are friends, where I'd send them memes and like have a laugh and like have a little bit of a chat, so then it can break up these really serious, chaotic moments and keep me just kind of aligned to what our greater purpose is. And also the fact that I'm not a surgeon, I'm a product marketing manager for a software company. So I'm here to just add EBITDA, add profit, add revenue to the organization. It's not a big deal. It's just not that serious. It's not that deep. So I hope that this helps you. Let me know if you have any questions, pop them down below. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn as Hattie the PMM. Come connect with me there. And I will see you in the next one.